Howard, welcome from one girl dad to another. Thanks for being here. Let's get uncomfortable, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Adam.
It's great to have you. I'm sure our listeners can tell after hearing you that you haven't spent your entire life in the US. Talk a little bit about your journey to the United States and your process of becoming a dad.
Okay, so yes, I am originally from Jamaica. So I came here in 2004 for college. So I started undergrad at a small little Baptist school in St. Louis, Missouri Baptist University. So I came here in a track scholarship and I was there for a year, and then I met my then wife because we've been divorced for 7 years now. So I met her there, but I've seen her before because we were in the same track conference in Jamaica. So when we both came to the same school, I met her, we dated, and then surprise, we found out that she was like 3 months pregnant.
Mm.
And, during that time, we're both in college and we're both like, we really don't want to have kids, right? And because that was our decision that we never wanted kids. And we, talked through the whole process, like, what has happened if we, think about having an abortion and how all these things will change, and it was tough because she got a offer to go to the University of Illinois. And then she got pregnant, and then, that all got thrown into the thing. And so we decided that, okay, we're going to have, at that time we said we're going to have the kid. And, here are some rules. We will not talk bad about each other in front of the kid. We will not let our parents raise our kid. We're going to do it. And, that was our decision. And we said, if it doesn't work out for us, we will always be friends and best friends because it's important for a child to know that you have two loving parents, regardless of where they are. That's a little introduction to me coming in and having a daughter. But it changed my whole perception, like once the child is here, then it's a little life. And now you have to really focus on taking care of it, and it was really nice. I would say she softened me up. It's like I was always the Grinch, and having a daughter, Adam, those
Mhm.
eyes, right? You just melt. There's no matter how hard you are, it doesn't work. I would say she made me better. I would say that
Mm.
that my daughter made me better.
How old were you when Tatiana was born?
I was 22,
Okay.
22. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And now you're buying her prom dresses
Yeah.
and all the fixins, we'll just say. We've talked about
Yeah.
all the fixins.
All the fixes, man. Prom just that she said wasn't gonna be expensive, but then it is, and then all the add-ons.
Yeah,
So
she got you. She
yes,
got you. The
she sure
dress
did.
was cheap, but then all the other things.
Hmm.
And the dress wasn't even cheap. Talk a little bit. So at some point, right, you and your ex-wife split up. Talk a little bit about that split and co-parenting, because I know Tatiana was old enough to then make a choice. Is she going to go with mom, or is she going to stay with dad, or at least have voice in that decision? Talk a little bit about that process as well, on when you all decided, okay, we can't be married anymore, and that split up and Tatiana's role in that.
Yes, so that was we split in 2014. I think that was when we decided that because that was the time I was really fighting the fact that I was bisexual, right? And it was really struggling, and I saw that I was drifting from her. And, it was the point where she thought it was because of her, and not being a good wife, why, the relationship wasn't working. And it was the point where I was just like, I had to be honest with myself, right? And I told her, I said, I think I'm bisexual, and she said, I know. She said, I always knew, but I think it wasn't my place to tell you, like you had to come to this yourself, and then she said, but I also think it's important for you to tell your daughter, and that time I think Tatiana was about 6. So I told Tatiana, I said, Dad, I want to tell you something, Dad also like guys. And she's like, I'm like, Mom like guys, and I like guys. And I'm like, no, Dad like guys the way how Dad like Mom. And I remember Tatiana saying, it's okay, and she's like, and I'm kind of getting really like emotional. And, Tatiana said, it's okay as long as you're going to still be my dad. And I was like, I will always be your dad, right? So we lived together. So both all three of us lived together in the house separate, right? We weren't, me and Shirley weren't together, but we decided we're going to still live together, still show up at, the meetings for her school, still do all the things for her, go to her games and everything like that, right? So, when in 2017, when we moved to Kentucky, Shirlene decided, she said, you know what, I think I'm going to go back home because I'm going to, my mom is getting sicker and I need to, spend more time to, take
Home,
care of her.
home being Jamaica.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
home being
Okay.
Jamaica, and at that point we asked Tatiana that, hey, mom is going to go back home, I'm going to be here, you know, um, who do you want to stay with? Where do you want to go to school? And she said, I want to stay with my dad. She said, I want to stay with my dad and I want to go to school here. And we were like, okay. And that's, yeah, we left that decision up to her because at that point she was about 9. And, we were like, you know what, she's old enough to make that decision, and it's not something where we want to just be the dictators in a sense saying, no, you are going to, go with your mom. And then, I think it would have also been unfair to just assume that because she's the woman, she needs to take care of the child, right? So we're like, if Tatiana said me, I'm gonna have to man up and do it. If she said her mom, her mom is just going to be the one to that she stays here, but we're both going to co-parent our child, whether it's here and there. So we create a system where she stays here with me during the school year, and then she go back to Jamaica to spend like Christmas and the summers with her mom.
Mm. Well, and Tatiana, I can just tell for all the listeners, Tatiana is not only beautiful, she's brilliant, she's mature, she is well spoken. She is just amazing young woman who's graduating this year from high school. And so I can imagine her at 9 having something to say about that decision, because there's times she not that she's the parent, but she tells dad what to do as well. She's on it, right?
He does
And
that.
in your journey, you grew up in a religious household, grew up Jamaican, hardcore, religious, Christian, Catholic, right? Talk about how that upbringing for you shaped your parenting, right? And the choices you've made as a dad, right? To Tatiana, talk about how that shaped it, how it changed it. Sometimes we learn some of the best things not to do. We also see some really good things to do. So, how did that religious upbringing shape how you parent?
Growing up, as a Jehovah's Witness, it was very tough. It was very strict too, right? And I realized that we were denied free thought because everything was structured in that way, and you have to think that way, and you have to do all those things. And if you deviate or ask, anything outside of the norm, then they would say you're becoming a rebel and you're becoming a worldlian, right? And I decided that I wasn't going to raise my child that way. because her mom was also raised, very religious too. So we decided that no, we're gonna allow her kid to have free thought, to think through things, right? And make a decision on the things. And I was never going to be, the type of person who you never talk about sex with your children, right? I remember, my mom, you just came home and you saw condoms, right? And the argument is you can't have sex in my house because you're a child and this is my house. And you never talk about anything. And if you ask questions, it's like, Jamaicans would say you're smelling yourself. So now you think you're a man because you have hair growing under your, on your body parts, and smelling yourself. So you think you can talk back to me and you think you can have an opinion. And I decided, I'm going to allow my child to have an opinion, and to contribute to a conversation and to have her own thoughts and her own ideas, because I'm raising a black woman too, right? This idea, you have to teach them to stand up for themselves, because it's this constant fight that they will always be in, right? So I decided that no, I'm going to raise my child different from the way how I was raised, and it's not that I took away the ability for her to, think that, there could be a higher power. We talk about everything. I said you can be, religious if you want to. You can be spiritual if you want to. We had her read the Bible. We go through all those things, and now I'm a practicing Buddhist. She comes sometimes, but I don't force her to do it, because I said, you will decide if you want to do it or not. And if you decide to, I love you the same. If you decide not to, I still love you the same. This is your life and this is your decision into the path you want to take.
Really, really mature way of looking at it. How, so you and your partner now live together. Tatiana lives with you,
Yes.
right? So talk about that transition in both of your lives to when your partner moves in and how Tatiana goes, how she handles that, and then her relationship with Eduardo. What does that look like?
So I think, it's funny because it seemed like the two people that I build a family with, which is, Tatiana's mother and Eduardo, right? Didn't want kids. But then they both rise to the occasion, right? Because now Eduardo loves Tatiana. He loves the fact that she's independent. And he likes the fact that, she thinks through things in her own way. And she would like push back and said, oh no, that's not how I see it. And he's like, I love this because he grew up Catholic too, you know, and he's like, we didn't have that thing, but in some way in his family, his mom is a devout Catholic and his dad is an atheist, right? And then he looked and he's like, if these two people can coexist, and still be married and raise three, wonderful sons, then the idea of us thinking that you can't do it, you can, right? I remember the conversation we had because Eduardo asked, he's like, how am I supposed to, deal and handle with this with Tatiana? And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, I'm scared because I don't know, if I should say, she should call me dad. And he's like, because I don't want her to do that. I said, just tell Tatiana to call you Eduardo. And he's like, I'm okay with that. And I'm like, you don't have to be her dad, You just need to be somebody that if she have a question, you'll answer, and if she needs help, you'll be there. And, he's like, okay. And then I saw, their relationship just grow, right? Because now Tatiana is going to do chemical engineering and Eduardo is a chemist, right? I've seen them sit together and work through like chemistry, problems. And at one point, she got a homework question which was incorrect, and he couldn't answer it, and he has a PhD, and he's like, I don't think this is right. And she's like, yeah, I don't think it's correct either. because I've done it and it's not correct. And I see them, like work together, and I know they talk, they do things together, they talk about science, and I'm not a science guy. So, I just drift away and leave them with that, right? Because that's not me, I'm the social justice type of guy. I'm the politics type of guy. The science and the math, I leave that with them, but
Mm,
that is their thing, that is just the way how they interact, and they're doing good, I think they're doing good. And I think it's not imposing, all these false expectation and people as to how people need to act. People just need to be themselves. And
yeah.
that was what we said, like, no, you just be you, she'll be her and I'll be me, and that's what it's just gonna be. So.
Mm. How has, because obviously we live in the quote unquote South, ruby red, Howard, ruby red, right?
Mhm.
And you're a member of the LGBTQ community. You're a Jamaican. You're a black man, right? You grew up youngest of what, 11,
13.
13 children, right?
Hmm.
If anything, your intersex don't fit in any of the so-called boxes that society has put in there. How does those boxes and how do the realities of living in a state that still thinks tradition is tradition, how has that shaped your parenting? How does Tatiana deal with people who have asked, not only your dad is, you just have a dad, but you kind of have two men in the household, and
Hmm.
then your dad is Jamaican, and all of these other things which are different. How has that shaped things in Kentucky? And do you think that'd be different living in a state that may be more progressive in certain ways?
Yes, I think it would be way different because we do have to, navigate spaces differently here, But that I don't do well being in boxes. I don't think I've ever been that type of person, because I always think it's some way stupid, for everybody to just force yourself in a box because society tells you you should do that, right? I think we just need to be ourselves. And I think even I've had members of the LGBTQ community tell me that, I know not gay enough, like, I'm straight passing. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like my sexuality really doesn't have anything to do with, the way how I present, right? I'm Howard. It is, yeah, me being bisexual is part of my whole identity, right? But it's not just that one thing. I'm a professional, right? I work, I do these things. I'm a father, right? I'm a partner. So I try to teach my kid that no, you need to be you because people have to see the authentic you, and they will either love the authentic you or not, and that's fine, right? And Edward always say these things. He said people have two jobs: one to get upset, and then the other to get over it. And it's the thing that we do in our house that we say to each other that people gonna have to get over the things that they get over. People gonna have to get over the fact that they don't understand how I don't fit in this box that they think I should fit in. And for me, I can't fit in those boxes, right? I look African American, but the moment I open my mouth, you're like, oh, he's not, right? I'm part of the rainbow, community, but then you said I don't present like part of the rainbow community. And what does that mean? Right? So I just can't, and I tell Tatiana, I said, you can't live your life pleasing other people. You have to live your life pleasing yourself, and other people will have to accept that you are you, you know but the Jamaican part of me also teach her that you have to learn what we call the street smartness, the common sense, that you have to observe your environment and know how to navigate those spaces, because sometimes people will find ways to hurt you and harm you because they just don't understand, and they'll force you to conform to something because it's easier for them. So, I teach her to always, be observant of that. And it's not code switching, but adapting in spaces that you need to be to get to where you need to go. And so that's how we kind of navigate it here. And you know how, Kentucky's, they sometimes they smile, with you, and they're like, they come off like they're, for you, and then the moment you turn your back, it's a totally different thing, right? We as professional black men in education, right? We can't be too outspoken. We can't be the most prepared, but we can also be the least prepared, right? So we have to figure out the way how to ask the question, by throwing them an assist, right? Because we just cannot be prepared professional in a space like that because to them it just don't comport.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why you and I get along so well, because as a multiracial guy raised in a predominantly Jewish community with a white family, I don't fit in the box that people want from me, right? I don't present multiracial to regular people that don't. Other multiracial people, they get it, they can see it. But outside of that, people think I got two black parents, right? And then I come in and I don't navigate spaces in the way most people with two black parents are taught to navigate spaces. Like my kids are taught, my grandkids are taught to navigate spaces with a certain sense of dimming and a certain sense of not wanting to poke the bear. And at some point, you just forget. You learn so much from the time you're born to you're 18 years old. And then even though I go off to college and the world becomes different and I realize, oh my gosh, it's less important than how I see myself than how people see me. I have to start navigating spaces differently. Because we work together, there's times that I forget. I mean, I was raised not shrinking myself. I was raised not knowing even how to do that. So it's almost like a conscious thing. And I think one of the best things you're saying about Tatiana is teaching her to be her authentic self. Because I'd rather deal with people who don't like my authentic me than don't like I step all over myself trying to outthink the pain me. How about I just be myself? And if you don't like that's okay, but at least I can be true to me, true to higher power, true to all the things. And honestly, I'm being true to you because I'm giving you a chance to either say yes or no to the real me and not to somebody else, right? And I think those pieces are the things that you're talking about. Are there some challenges that you think are unique to your journey as a girl dad, but also a member of the LGBTQ community, a Black girl dad, not just living in the South, but period? Are there some things that you think? I mean, Kobe talks about being a girl dad, but he had a wife. Vanessa was there all the time, right? So talk a little bit about the stuff. I mean, you and I talked one day, we were going to go do something after work, and you were like, bro, I can't go. I got to go get a prom dress. I got to
Right,
do
right.
these things. So talk about some of the things unique to your experience being a father of a young Black woman.
The struggle is the emotional piece, right? When they tell you to show up vulnerable, you have to show up vulnerable, and so we fight, right? Me and Tatiana, we fight because I sometimes forget that, you know, because of my upbringing in Jamaica, you're taught that you have to be tough, right? And you have to be strong and you have to work through things. And so I project some of that on her sometimes, and I forget that sometimes she's emotional, right? And it's okay to cry. So, when she's crying because, she feels like I'm getting her frustrated, I'm like, why are you crying? And then, she's like, bro, because, you're not allowing me to express myself. So I'm frustrated, and this is the way how I express that, right? And then I realized that sometimes she just want me to listen. She don't need me to give her opinion. She don't need me to fix it. She just need me to sit, shut my mouth, and listen to her. And that's all she need. And sometimes it's this thing where I'm realizing that as they transition to get older, you being a parent to them become less important, and then you start being a friend to them, right? And most time that is the thing that was the hardest for me to get, because when she was younger, right, that was where I was. I was, the dad that we go, cruising, and we go to the store and we go to the mall, we walk the mall, we go and we feed ducks with bread, and we talk about things, right? And we have and then the older she gets, she's like, that's what I want. No, right? No, I'm trying to be the parent, right? And she's like, no, bro, your parenting style was never that,
Well, and the thing
you
is,
know?
we see, especially what we do for a living every day, we see that this shit is serious,
Mm-hmm.
especially for black women.
Yeah.
And so we get a little freaking intense,
Yes.
right? Look, you ain't gonna fall for this, or people aren't gonna mess with you this way, or you're not gonna turn up this way or that way. And it's different. I think it's different for people who don't work with college age young people every day. But we
Mm-hmm.
we see that those are somebody who works in a bank or delivers the mail. They can sit and kind of live in this place of ignorance and bliss. Oh, never my kid. Look, every one of the 36,000 students we have on campus is somebody's child.
Mm-hmm.
And they do some crazy stuff and with serious consequences. So I think it makes you feel like, okay, if this could happen to anyone, it can happen to me and mine. And so we tend to take it seriously. One of the things I've said to both of my daughters recently is that I would choose them as friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would choose to hang out with them. We're doing a campus wide event this week, and my daughter is sitting next to me most of the days that we're doing it. She's there. We do the family business. She's in the same work. Our oldest daughter is a teacher. So when you decide, and this is the one piece that we always tell our college students, but it's even harder for us. When Tatiana goes to school this fall, she is going to have as much to say in defining your and her relationship as you have to say. And she is not just by what she says, but what she does, going to have to change that relationship between a adolescent parent relationship and a basically an adult parent relationship.
Yeah.
And it isn't just do what I say, it's let's partner, let's be friends, let's mentor, let's talk through things. But it's hard what we do for a living because every day we see how serious life's choices are with young people her age. And so I think that's part of making it harder for you.
It's true. It's true. I remember, I think she was about 11 or, something like that, or 13. And she did something stupid. And, I was trying to like scold her about it, and she actually stood up for herself, and basically she's kind of like, I'm a child and this is expected of me to do, and I'm like, but you're not supposed to do that. And she's just like, yeah, but, I'm your kid. I'm just like you, and you did that, and I had to check myself because I'm like, it's true, right? And you forget. And she's like, I know I messed up, but I can work through this because you taught me how to, adjust and fix the thing I need to do. And yeah, and I think, that's why I've given her a lot of freedom. I never gave her a curfew. I said, I don't believe in curfews. I said, I've raised you enough to understand that as a, 17-year-old young woman, how late is too late because you have class in the morning, right? Or you have your internship that you need to do. So you need to know. I'm like, the only rule is, if you deviate from the plan that you tell me you're going to do, you just send me a message to tell me. And she said, and you have to do the same, Dad, because when you go out and I expect you to come a certain time, and I don't see you, I'm gonna text you. And she does, She's like, hello, are you still alive? Are you okay? And I'm like, my bad, I forgot to text you. I'm actually doing this and doing that. And she's like, And I realized that that is it, right? We have to hold each other accountable and be okay when the people who we love is holding us accountable. And it's nice to see that from your daughter, right? Because they say women mature faster than men, right? So we're always like behind every time, and the moment, and she moves like that. And then she adapts very fast. She thinks very like deep and critical about things. To sometimes it scares me, because I'm like, when she starts to date, seriously, I think she's going to make a lot of men uncomfortable, because she's not going to be the typical girl that they think, she should be, But I told her, I said, you will find one that would, rise to the occasion and would embrace that, So don't think you have to change who you are to navigate spaces like that. Just be you and
You'll attract the right people. Yeah, if you give it time.
mhm,
Because you're right, you're going to have to give, if Tatiana is interested in men, she's going to have to give a lot of these young boys time
yeah,
because these fools ain't, I mean, they aren't even close to her
yeah,
level at 17.
yeah,
It's going to take 25 till
yeah,
they're even close. How do you, because you have all this talk from some alt religious right people, we're trying to protect people from trans folks and gay folks and queer folks because you know what, if they even see those images, it's grooming like any time. Well, you have a daughter who
yeah,
lives in a house with same-sex partners,
yep.
right? As a mom, right? Too, in another country. How do you deal with that? How has that shaped her reality and her understanding of not only who she is, who she loves, right? And how do you feel when you see those kinds of ideas from certain folks that just being raised in a household with a same-sex couple makes the child interested in same-sex people?
Ignorance. I remember I was working at Macy's, and one of my colleague, very conservative, and she said, I want to ask you a question. And I said, okay. And she said, I don't really know about this thing, but she's like, how did you know you were attracted to men? And I said, the same day I know I was attracted to women was the same day I know I was attracted to men. I said, this idea of people thinking that, you're groomed to it, I said, it's not true. And I've had conversations with Tatiana, and I said to her, I said, hey, in this house, you are free to be who you are. I said, if girls is who you're into, girls is who you're into. I said, if guys is who you're into, guys is who you're into. And I said, if it's both, I said, even if you're exploring and you don't know, I said, because I told her, I said, the biggest issue I see, Adam, with people like those is they're all afraid, to ask the question and to feel love, right? People always think that love is only attached to a romantic feeling with a significant other. And so when you say you love your student today, you're like, I love you and you can count on me. He said, I know, I love you too, you know? And it's this mindset of not understanding that love is love and relationship is relationship.
That's
And they
right.
all have the same thing, right? I tell my best friend every day I love him.
Mm.
He tells me he loves me, and he tells me that we have to improve our relationship in the ways that you improve your relationship with your significant other, you know? And I think with those people, they're just afraid because they probably had that feeling, right? You love your friend and you miss them when they're gone, but you feel that to tap into that emotional side for somebody that you're not romantically in love with, right? Or you have feelings for is weird.
Well, and you and I have talked about that whole concept as well. The word English is such a jacked up language. It's so limiting. Love. So that applies to how I feel about my wife, how I feel about my higher power, how I feel about my kids, how I feel about Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey ice cream. It's all the same.
Mhm.
No, it's not. It's different, right? And I can love Chris, my student, and
Yeah,
Chris knows I love him.
yeah,
But we just screw it up, right? Because the loves I described are all different loves,
correct.
right? And it's okay to express that in different ways. I think one of the pieces, because you and I had a similar conversation, and it wasn't because it was coming from a conservative space, because you know I'm anything but that. It was, I was struggling with the both.
Right.
You know, I get how I've always known I'm attracted to women or I've always known I'm attracted to men. And I said a similar thing to you.
Hmm.
Explain to me how the both worked. And you said the same thing. The same day I knew I was attracted to women, I knew I was attracted to men. And I said, so both the same? And you said, yeah. I see a good looking woman and I'm like, ooh. I see a good looking dude and I'm like, ooh. And that makes sense. Where you, because of who you are in our relationship, I could talk to you about something I was thinking. And it wasn't about how is someone attracted to the same sex. I was struggling with the both
Hmm.
part of it, right?
Hmm.
Which was new and interesting to me. Um, I think one of the challenges is this whole idea. Someone we were talking, I think it was today, that was talking about homosexuality and it being a sin. And I am just so tired of hearing being queer is a sin. It drives me crazy as someone who studied to be a pastor, because what you and Eduardo have was not happening in the Bible, period, right? It's like the Second Amendment people who think they have a right to have an AR-15 and a flamethrower and all of these things because people who had muskets and shot buffalo needed a gun to protect their household as well as to hunt, right?
Hmm.
You had to consider time and space. What was happening in the time where people were talking about certain things being not the way God intended it to be, people, that was debauchery. We're not, you and Eduardo love each other and are married and I have a family. I can't imagine how any God I know or any higher power I know would have a problem with that. It just wasn't happening back then. And so then it's, well, being this is wrong. No, it's being a whore is wrong. And I think the piece, the one thing I'll add, dad to dad, that you were saying about Tatiana, if you love women, I'm good. If you love men, I'm good. If you love both, I'm good. Just don't love assholes.
Thank you.
That's it. I'm good. As long as it isn't assholes,
Yeah.
I can rock with whatever gender or genders you choose to love. Yes?
And and that was the part that for me, Adam, like kind of short circuited me, right? Because my mother was a very, very, practical woman, but she was very conservative, right? And she would tell you that she's okay with whoever you decide to lay down with as long as you're okay, right? And then I'm like, but you're so religious, but then you're telling me that you're okay with that, right? Like, and then my dad was the one who was the most affectionate to us growing up. He's the one that would give us the hugs and the kisses. My mom is the one that I ain't got time for that. I have all these things that I need to do. So then for me growing up in that, it kind of just it changed the way how I think. And I think now it changed the way how I move, right? Because I'm like, to us growing up, there were no gender roles. Because we all of the sons had to know how to do the domestic work, right? Know how to cook, know how to clean, know how to do laundry, know how to iron. And then my sisters also had to know how to take care of the yard. And then those people who severely religious people, right? They like to subscribe to these gender roles, and you need to do this and you need to do that, and you're like, no, because if you're telling me that you believe in the most supreme being, you're telling me that the supreme being is not flexible and doesn't understand that, and then you say, but God doesn't make a mistake. But then if you say, I'm a saint, then he did make a mistake.
Mm,
you know, and then you say all these things and you're like, so then he makes me uniquely who I am. And then he also makes me a part of him,
yes.
right? Because he's all encompassing, you
Mm,
know, and his love is huge enough to understand that we're all different because we love the rainbow when it rains and it rainbow and we're like, oh, so beautiful, those beautiful colors. But we hate differences,
mm,
right? And we can't be, you know, children of God, as people would say, and you love his creation, his beautiful colors. You see them in animals, you see them, you know, fishes, flowers, you know, plants, the rainbow. And then when you see it in people, you're like, oh no, that's where I draw the line.
right.
I can't love that. No,
Well,
no, I
because
don't love
you
that.
aren't, because those folks aren't confident in themselves and who they are, right? Because that difference is a challenge to them and their beliefs. And I think the piece that you're saying so very well is how so many folks struggle with the fact that, okay, God doesn't make mistakes, but people do. There isn't one thing that God hasn't made perfect that we haven't screwed up. Everything, everything. We have weather that is insane because we have destroyed the planet. We have difference that he's built in people that's supposed to be celebrated and rejoiced, and we just want everybody to change and be like us. There isn't one thing he didn't make perfect that humans and all of our sin haven't screwed up. So why would we ever think this is a thing that he didn't make this way? And our reaction to it is part of the sin, not the behavior being the sin. The one thing I wanted to ask you, Howard, because you talked a little bit about how you and your ex are co-parenting, right? And I think this is a really important piece as a dad, and especially your daughter now, who's going to be in college next year, who's choosing
Mhm.
to go to college in the US, right? Talk a little bit about the challenges of co-parenting with somebody in another country and what that looks like, because culturally it's different, right? Tatiana here is a Black woman, but in Jamaica it's different. That's a whole
Mhm.
different culture and vibe and jam. How do you co-parent in those spaces, and how do you make her proud to be in what the US sees as Black, but the world in Jamaica sees as this whole diaspora of being a descendant of the continent, right?
Mhm. So, you know, co-parenting, it's tough because there are times when, you know, I wish that Tatiana mother was here, you know, where we could just talk about things, right? Because Tatiana may be going through something and you know, it's the time when, you know, she needs a different voice, right? And she needs her mother, right? And it's hard when you realize that I can't give her that and her mother need that. But then you pick up the phone, right? And then her mother is busy, so she didn't get it, right? And it's also when, you know, the mom is talking to Tatiana, and then you have to go back and say, hey, the young girl that you know, you see 6 months ago or, you know, 2 years ago is not the young girl you're talking to right now. You know, and I remember I had to tell her that, hey, I know you still want to be the parent that, you know, is a disciplinarian and, you know, the one that would scold her. I said, she has gone past that. No, you have to be the best friend type that she's going to say some things to, and she just needs you to listen. And she just needs your opinion as a best friend, not as a parent. You know, I told her, I said, there's nothing more we can do to raise her. We've done all that we can. This is the young woman we've created. This is the young woman we've raised. And I think it's taken time, you know, for Tatiana mother to really understand, you know, that hey, yeah, I have to let go, right? But it's tough. It is tough. And I'll give her credit though. She's a kick-ass mom. You know, she is a kick-ass woman because in a way, it's kind of like, you know, I've destroyed, you know, a perfect world. She thought that, you know, we would live together, we would grow old together, right? But to think about this woman having the space in her heart, right, to say, after 10 years, this guy's telling me that, you know, he's also in love with men, and he feels like, he loves men more than women, right? And now she finds the time and the space to say, I'm hurt, but I'm not going to hate you. Because I could see culturally that part of our culture is what forces this, right? And I tell her, man, I give her real props, and I look at her strength and I see that through Tatiana, and I'm just like, I think I got the better end of the deal in terms of like, having two powerful women in my life, right? One on my right, one on my left, right? That I can always lean on. And there is never a question that I have that I can't, run past Shirley and she'll tell me the truth, or even Tatiana, and I think about those things. And I think part of it is a culture of saying that, we are, descendants from Africa, right? But then we come to places and we intertwine those things that our ancestors, passed down to us, and then the things that we do in a new space, and I tell Tatiana, I said, you're not Jamaican, you're an American, but you're of, Jamaican descent. And I said, you have to own that, that you're an American woman, you know? And I didn't say a Black American woman, I said an American woman, because people sometimes don't understand that African Americans, the culture and the things that they create. And I say this because I took for granted the sacrifices of Black Americans in America, right? Because I come in and it's the sacrifice of all those Black mothers, all those Black fathers, right? To put literally their skin in the game to make me, a Caribbean man to now come to America and is benefiting and things, right? Culturally, we had some African things in Jamaica that we had. African Americans, everything was stripped from them. They had to start from nothing. So literally, they picked themselves up by the bootstraps or the heel on their feet, right? It's sometimes they probably didn't have bootstraps. And they create something and made a contribution to a place where I could come in now and raise, a proud Black, woman in the South who has confidence, who is educated, who is coming into college with 40 credits, college credits,
Man,
who is coming in to say, I think I can do this, and I think I'm gonna do well, and I know I'm gonna do well, and I give Black Americans props to that.
it made me think of the great Shirley Chisholm when you were talking about Tatiana.
Yes.
Unbought, unbossed,
Yes.
right? Just that way. The piece that I think you're right, as you were talking about Charlene, is as dads, it seems like yesterday when I was driving my 31-year-old to Creek Day School. It seems like yesterday when I was moving her into the University of Cincinnati. So it's like yesterday I was walking my now 30, gosh, dog, 6-year old daughter down the aisle in a wedding. And so in Charlene's life, she's missing 4, 5, 6 months and isn't physically with Tatiana, but it's a lifetime in
Hmm.
Tatiana's life. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because you and I have talked about, Tatiana's going to graduate in a month-ish, right?
Hmm.
And is going to go to college, and you've insisted, and she has, that she's going to live on campus. I know she's ready, bro, but are you ready? I mean, you're, you said 22. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you were a grown-ish man at 22, but we know some 22-year-old brothers that aren't grown.
Hmm.
So your entire adult life has been with her. Now she isn't going far, right? But
Right.
knowing her, she's gonna be far. She's gonna want her space because
Right.
she's on campus right now. So talk a little bit about that. Are you ready? How are you going to manage not having her every day as your best friend, your counsel, your person? And because we know that outside of preschool to kindergarten, the biggest growth in a human being's life is the first year of college to the second. So
Hmm.
Tatiana is going to be a completely different person a year from now than you know today. Are you
That's
ready
true.
for that, brother?
I'll say this. I'm ready for her to get out the house, so I don't feel like, I have to, think so much about, making sure that there's food in the house and these things, right? But I say that, but I don't think I am, I don't think I ever will, right? Because yeah, Tatiana has always been around me, and no, when she goes see her mom, I have to like force myself not to text her, to say that I have to leave, her to just spend time and just, absorb the space around her mother, right? And then now she's going to be in college where I'm going to work at. And then I'm like, you can't be the dad hovering, right? And I have to give her that space too, because now I have to understand this is going to be her home, right? So I'm coming to visit, so I can't overstay my visit, right? And but I don't think I'm ready.
No.
I think it is going to be the same feeling when I see this baby, like it's born, and I hold this, baby, like minutes after she's born, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to, pivot and adjust to taking care of this and doing this, right? And I think it's gonna have to be the same thing when she leaves. I'm gonna have to figure out that
Well,
because you are right, you know, not seeing her and then she comes back after a semester, it's going to be a totally different person, right? Because college is a microcosm of the broader society in the world, right? So, yeah,
and it isn't going to be dad's way or our way. It's going to be her way. And that's
right.
part of the growth. And it's what we do for a living, just like we started the conversation. We
Yeah,
see young people every day and have these conversations with them on how they're going to go home and basically their family's life has been on pause and they're going to jump back in and they're going to say, well, no, I've formulated my own way of thinking and my own way of being and my own way of doing. I can just tell you one girl dad to another, daddies and daughters are different. It's
yeah.
just a different thing. And
Hmm.
especially, and the one thing I can tell you, admitting you don't know how you're going to handle it, because it's part of that. I'm tired. You laying on my couch, you ain't doing nothing. I'm tired of looking at you. That kind of stuff is how we feel. But we know deep down that things change and it's a huge change. I can tell you, I know you're up for it. Howard Johnson, you are a hell of a father, an even better man. I appreciate you sharing the time and space, being so vulnerable with us today. Bro, I love you.
Love you too. Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you for having me. I guess we'll have to have the part two after a semester of her out the house to see
Okay,
how that's going. Yeah.
I'm with that. We will revisit it. Thank you so much for joining us, Howard. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Get Uncomfortable. There are a variety of ways that you can support the show, including leaving a review, sharing an episode with a friend, or visiting us at getuncomfortablepodcast.com to visit our merch store or request sponsorship information. Until next time, stay uncomfortable.